I am so excited. Today we have Rachel from her newly created Move With Me books. But Rachel and I go way back years ago, Rachel. We haven't seen each other in person for, I don't know, 5, 6 years. We used to meet up at the National Kids Yoga Conference. So I'm really excited to share Rachel's experience with you, specifically because I don't know, I've never said this to you, but I kind of find you to be like a multi-passionate yogapreneur, if you can say that, right? Like you follow lots of different areas, right? And you've taught children and adults and different businesses. You kind of just go with the flow. And what how I my takeaway from that is that you embody yoga, right? And so it whatever you're up to in life, right? And you go along with what works for your family and where you're living. I love that about you. But you tell me in your own words, share with us your background, your work, your passion, because it's been a few years since we've connected. So I'd love to catch up to what you're up to.
Yes, I just got teary just hearing you say that. Like, I mean, yoga is like definitely, it's like changed my life. Like just that embodiment, almost like I feel like I'm a river and then I get stuck in an eddy and then I go with the river. So my background, we haven't actually, I mean, it's been like over a decade that we met at the National Kids Yoga Conference, which is pretty cool. So my background is I've always worked with kids. I've always loved working with kids. I was 16 as a lifeguard teaching kids swimming. And then I went to college and I was studying early childhood development. And then I transferred and did youth ministry. And then during my early college days, I was teaching health and fitness. So I've always kept those worlds were really separate. So I was like a preschool teacher, and then I was, at the gym teaching step aerobic classes and weightlifting, and then I got pregnant, and yoga found me,
Yes,
and I couldn't
right.
do the weightlifting classes anymore. And I loved yoga as my own personal practice. And my kids were about 3 and 4, and I was going through my adult yoga training. And at that time, it was like 2000 and I don't know, 9. There really weren't a lot of yoga resources. The conference hasn't started yet. We didn't have all these connections like we do now. So I just started writing kids' stories and developed the very first kid yoga app. And that was my business at the time, was called Kids Yoga Verse.
Yeah.
And it was, the iPad came out in 2010. We were approached because I was like, oh, I'm just a mom playing yoga, writing stories, that turned into 3 apps, and actually like presented at the Kids Yoga Conference on that kids yoga business isn't monkey business, and ended up letting go of that company. And so it's interesting how you introduced me of just, things set you up for where you are at the right
Yeah.
time. And it's
Yeah.
okay to like be like a crab and move into new shells, or shed new skin
Oh,
like a
yes.
snake. Um, so that's kind of where I am right now, is circling back and putting all those things together.
Yeah, awesome. And so the reason we're joining together to talk about, we're specifically talking about different learning styles. So our backgrounds together with education, we're both really passionate, making sure that we're including all learners, right, in our yoga spaces. You and I are both obsessed with literature in particular, so we both love story, and so that's one way that we've used to cater to different learning styles, right? So this conversation is about really why. Like, let's start with that. Like, why is it important to cater to different learning styles? And what can sometimes happen as readers or educators is that we can kind of follow the learning style, like teach from the learning style that works for us. So maybe I'm a visual person, but maybe not auditorio kinesthetic. So how do we make sure that no matter what our own learning styles are, that we are catered to everyone? So why is this important? What are the benefits of different learning styles?
Yeah, I think as someone like myself who's neurodivergent, and as a kid who really struggled, it's so interesting that I've authored books and I was in remedial reading as a child.
Right.
Like I really had a hard time with comprehension until I realized that I'm a kinesthetic learner. And so I think that it's important for all kids to touch on all learning styles. And I think we just have a natural bent. There's like the three ones, like the auditory, the kinesthetic, and the visual, like are the ones that we can, work with within our classes. But there's so much more than that, as you know, right? Like there's music, there's nature, there's have you heard of Dr. Howard Gardner? Yeah.
Yes,
So
I
like
heard him
I'm like,
speak recently. Yeah, yeah,
you
so
did? Oh my gosh, like he
yeah,
changed
yeah,
my life.
yeah,
He's the one who developed multiple intelligence theory in the 80s. I grew up in the 80s. I'm like, where were you my whole life? My
yeah,
teachers didn't know, or practice that at the time. Um, I think it's because also it helps kids understand. And not everyone can sit and look at a book and process the information and or even look at a book. And so I think creating
mm,
elements where you can embody story, even use a song, it connects you. You actually absorb the
mm,
information and learn. I think that's why personally I think it's important, and how to deliver that to your classes is really important, even if
mm.
it's not your natural bent.
Right, exactly. So they can enjoy the story or enjoy the learning experience in a deeper way. So, it's not just, I mean, now I can see in the schools that, a lot of it's on black and white smart boards, right? And so there's a lot of print on that, but I think that that's only catering to one learning style, right? A lot of children can't relate. And I have a hard time trying to read what it's all about or whatever. It has to be, integrated, interactive, using different learning styles, different movement, even within a classroom, right? So I can see that would make such a difference to the way that children learn. So what would you talk about is sort of like these three tips on, how do we make sure that we're catering to the different learning styles? You mentioned Howard Gardner and the seven multiple intelligences, but how do we actually put that into practice? What are sort of your tips for that in a yoga session?
Yeah. So one of the things that I do for like my music people, I always have like instrumental or like sound bowl music playing when they enter into the classroom. It like sets the tone. It's calming. There's a rhythm. So that's one way with like my music people that will be playing. I also have blank pieces of paper and crayons in the center of the circle. When they come in, they have the freedom to doodle if they want to, or write if they want to. So for the kinesthetic learner, not only like you can participate in the yoga practices, but even just hand to paper and having that connection. So music, paper and pens. I have like one more thing. And then options. I think giving the student an option. I talk about learning styles in my class. And so when we come into circle, I'll
Mm,
say, our expectations and agreements in this class are that you stay on your mat and you have options here. The only thing
mm,
I really ask you is that if you have friends moving next to you who really want to move their body, that you respect their movement. But if you are in a space today that you don't feel like moving, or maybe you're a little tired and you want to draw and write, you are still participating in this class. I think one of my biggest pet peeves is like, especially when there's other teachers in the room, or you're going to a school and you're sharing an experience, is that kids get shushed a lot. Or they'll be like, you're not paying attention because you're doodling. And I will tell the student, sometimes you actually process when you're doodling. If I'm reading you a story and you need to doodle, that's you processing the information. You have the freedom to do that in this class.
right.
So
Yeah.
I would say options and talking to them about how they learn and how they're feeling. Um, a music element for rhythm and tone, and just having paper and something in their hands if they need to have a felt experience on their mat while we're in like a practice.
Right. I love what you're talking about. You're creating an environment, right? So you're thinking about those multiple intelligences. There's an intention there. A lot of us would probably already do it in classrooms or in clinics or studios anyway, but it's just about checking that intentionality, making your little checklist, right? To make sure you're doing it. And then also that next step of what I'm hearing from you is that you're teaching the children to also learn to regulate and know their own learning styles. And so you could model that and say, I noticed that you really like to doodle during. Do you know that that's probably the way your brain works, right? Or I have these visuals, I have the yoga cards, you and I are doing books and things. So, we have that. So we have a visual that we can look at, right? So it's not just storytelling, but there's a picture behind it that they can be looking at. So I love that you're getting the children involved too and learning their own learning styles, the different learning styles. So share with us a story, Rachel, because we love stories. Tell us a
Yeah,
story about the way, maybe something where you connected with a child over the years, and maybe you helped them in a different way with their different learning style.
yeah, it kind of goes like what we just talked about. So my son's a senior now, and I've been teaching kids yoga since he was in preschool. I just like followed him along the way, although I don't do his high school classes anymore. Once middle school hit, I was fired from my children. But his fifth grade class was probably one of the most memorable moments that I had with understanding on how to reach different learners and to connect with them. So I went into class, and I'm going to read this quote because I'll be like, do you all know who Albert Einstein is? And of course they're like, he's like one of the smartest people who ever lived. I'm like, he says everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. And I would share with them, I grew up feeling really stupid because I didn't understand how I learned and processed information. So today, what we're going to do is I'm going to guide you through a meditation, and you are going to get to pick if you want to be the artist, which you can draw, the writer, where you can write, or the scientist, where you can observe. And I just gave them all like a few moments to pick. They all picked something different, and their faces were beaming. This is when I was like, okay, this is it. This is why I do what I do. And they all did their own meditation, and some wrote, some observed. And then the magic was, since we had time in the classroom, we paired the artist with the writer and the observer with the illustrator, or we just whoever paired with who, but they were different. And so like the writer would tell the artist what to draw, and they would draw it. And then the illustrator would tell the writer, and they would write it. And it has been one of the best lessons. And I still continue to use it to this day. And it was just so powerful to witness their faces and to say, I love that I get to write, or I get to draw, or even the observer who wants to just process and sit and listen. Like, you're still learning, you're still participating.
Right. I think that reminds me too that, when we stop as educators to look to see what is the outcome here. When we look at all the curriculum, it's overwhelming, right? The educational standards we have to follow. But if we're looking at the outcome, what is it we want our children to learn, and what are the different ways to get there, right? And so you're offering different options for them to access that material, right? And so interesting, you were talking about that you're a remedial reader, and now you're a writer. I was the same. I have a mathematics degree. I'm obsessed with math. And then I would never believed that if you told me years later, decades later, I'd be an author. Like I did not love English. But I think what you and I bring to this space is an appreciation for literature in a different way, because we both didn't love it growing up, and so it wasn't like our zone of genius. It wasn't our main learning style, right? It wasn't something that came easy to us. So we're able to bring that passion into making a difference with children. So yeah, there's a lot there. It's amazing. Now, what are some of your favorite props or books that you use in some of your yoga classes?
Well, I feel like I always have in the center that the glitter jar.
Yes.
That's really grounding, the glitter jar. I use the chimes in every class. I play sound bowls, so they love sound bowls. I love okay, so I just got this from Lanny from Mindful Yoga Breaks. She just gave me
Oh,
this
yes.
idea.
Yes.
I'm kind of obsessed.
Yeah, I have one too. They're amazing, right?
Obsessed. Um,
Yeah.
I love your cards. So I did a whole
Oh,
camp based on your chakra cards, and it made my
oh,
whole
cool.
camp so easy to
Oh,
plan because it was a Monday through Friday, and I did like the chakra cards, and then I printed both of them out, and we did memory. And so your
fun.
cards are amazing. So those are great props. Oh, those little fuzzy little balls, like they look like cotton balls. We play toga.
Yes.
This
Yes.
and books. I love traditional books too, like The Grinch Who Stole Christmas or The Giving
Right.
Tree.
Yeah.
Um, and Susan Verde books, and the I Am Yoga books. Gabby Garcia, like have you read some of her stuff?
Yeah.
Um, like the body, I can't remember the title in the moment. It's like
Oh,
she
the
has like
thinking body. Yes. She has a
yeah,
number of them. Yes.
yeah. So those are fun. My gosh, I have like books everywhere in my car, in my yoga
Right.
studio, in like everywhere books. Gail
Right. Right.
Silver, I love her books too.
Yeah.
Mindful Bee and the Worry Tree is going to be one of the featured books on my next
Awesome.
project.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Right. Well, that's a good segue. Why don't you talk to us about what's next for you? What's happening? What's next?
So yeah, combining this world with literature and movement. In addition to writing my own books, I love reading other people's books, and so it's called Move With Me Books, and it is a story time with movement, breath, and meditation. And so I'm super excited about that. There'll be a YouTube channel. So I really want resources for teachers to access. I think that it's just, even if they have 20 minutes in their classroom to have a story time and have some integration of movement and embodying the story, breathing in the story. And also, as we know, breath is regulating. So I'm calling it Embody a Literary Movement.
Oh, it's amazing. So excited. And yet another amazing business you're going to start. I love this. I can't wait. Whatever your touch turns to gold, my dear. So I have no doubt it'll be fabulous. So how can we find you online? How can we find out more about this?
Yeah, movewithmebooks.com. I am Rachel Glowacki on Instagram, and we just put an Instagram together for Move With Me Books. And I'm on all three of those things.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time today, my dear. So good to catch up.
For
Looking
having me.
forward to see your next steps in your journey.
Thank you, Giselle.